no matter who it is in the AEC industry, I have never found anybody on a linear path. Something pivots or pushes them, or they said they'll never do something, then they ended up doing it. Or ones that just kind of stumble upon like a specialty or a niche that they weren't really expecting, but then they found they loved it. So they just did more of it.
That's so true. And when you're young and right out of school, I think most people feel like, well, I went to school for this. Now I'm going to get a job in this. And then 5 years from then, I will potentially move into this next step of my career. And then 10 years from now, I'll be here. There's so many unknowns, so many variables. And again, I think you have to be adaptable, but enjoy the journey because you don't know where it'll take you.
Exactly. Like I had no idea when I graduated college that I'd be doing this podcast or all these other things on the side. It's like, nope, I graduated. I just wanted to be an architect and go work on healthcare projects. And I've done so many other different project types and doing all sorts of things that there's no way I could have guessed that 10 years ago when I graduated.
Yeah, so. That's awesome.
Over talking to people with the podcast and recruiting and coaching, what are some typical struggles you find within the AEC profession?
I think the biggest thing we touched on are labor shortages, finding the right people for the position. Companies have a tough time, so that's why they hire recruiters. I always tell them, I understand it's expensive, and so we're not your first choice. I get that. But hopefully we can speed up the process for you and vet them out a little bit before they go for an interview, before you hire them. We've done some of that legwork for you and find that great match for you. So labor shortages for sure. I think economic constraints, we talked about the recession, that's really tough too. Obviously, inflation has been difficult for a lot of firms. You're seeing some projects put on hold and things like that, or hiring put on hold. It's especially hard for smaller firms who are trying to attract and retain top talent. But those are the two toughest. And then again, those big peaks and valleys. So the workload, knowing the work you have coming in, when to hire, and then how to keep your folks busy if there is a slowdown.
Yeah. And how would, I guess I've never really reached out to a recruiter solo. I've had plenty of recruiters reach out to me.
So you're LinkedIn, right?
Exactly. And I've at least gotten good at least getting back to you guys and saying like, hey, not interested. Because one of my pet peeves is ghosting people. And the amount of times that like people would just keep following up, it's like, just tell them not now and it's fine. But if I was in a position as a individual looking for a job, what advice do you have for that individual to reach out to a recruiter that may need some help?
Yeah, great question. So number one, yes, always respond to the recruiter, even if you're not interested, because you never know. I always tell people, don't burn a bridge. Just keep the door open for opportunities or at least conversations, because you don't know what's going to happen down the road. And then if you do need a recruiter for you, for your friend, a colleague, you've got their number or their name saved in your LinkedIn messages. But if you are looking, update your LinkedIn, update your resume. If you're on LinkedIn, and hopefully you are, turn on your open to work to recruiters. You don't have to be open to work for everyone to see, so colleagues can't see it, but at least be open to work for recruiters. And then if you've got an updated resume and those keywords in your profile, we will be able to find you. We do all the searches, so we can find you. And don't be scared to ask questions, or at least just have an open conversation with the recruiter, because a lot of people, I think, just don't want to have that conversation. And if you're at work, we're happy to call at lunch, after hours. We can text or email. You can set your own boundaries and what you're comfortable with. And if you have questions about who the firm is or the type of work they do, feel free to ask those things up front, and we'll tell you everything we can. A lot of times the clients, we only have as much information as the clients give us. So we will encourage a call, because if you have questions, why not have a 15-minute call with the HR person or the hiring manager, and they can answer your questions, and then just an initial call.
Yeah. I've never like put on my LinkedIn like ever opening for work, like open for work or hiring. So it's good to know that that could be hidden, because like if I was open to work, I wouldn't want my own employer to know that.
Right.
And you're connected with so many people internally with your office, so it's good to know that that's an option, to at least hide it to recruiters only.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you know, AEC is such a small world, small industry.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows everyone else. And I think that's a concern for a lot of candidates when they work with a recruiter. Well, where's my resume going? And you can definitely ask who your resume is being sent to, and know that a lot of times, if it is being marketed to other companies, that will be shared with you, and it can be sent confidentially. They take off your name, your contact information, your current employer, your license number, anything that could give you away.
Yeah. Now here's a general question. Why, when a recruiter reaches out to me, do they not actually tell me what firm is interested? They always say like this up and coming or this large firm, and then they give you like 5 words, and I'm like, well, if you just tell me who it is, I could either be really excited or tell you no right away.
A lot of times we'll wait for the response, and then if they're interested, okay, great. Well, I'm happy to tell you, Caitlin, who the firm is, what type of work they do. But the reason we don't give it up front is because that's our commodity, having the client that we're working with. And if we are to tell you who the client is, a lot of recruiters fear that you would just self-apply or tell your friend, hey, apply at so-and-so, they're hiring. So they don't want to always tell you right up front.
I always find it a game, even when I'm not like looking. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can figure out what firm it is without reaching out and asking.
It is a little cat and mouse game.
Because especially in Pittsburgh, it's a smaller city, so there's not as many firms as like LA, New York, those bigger metropolitan areas. So it's like, I wonder if I could figure it out.
Yeah.
See what's going on.
Certain keywords, and you're like, yep, I know who that is.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for anyone struggling in their current work situation?
I do. Yes. I would say try to identify try to identify the root cause. So take some time to really reflect and ask yourself what's going on. Communicate with your supervisor. Always be willing to go to your manager or upper management and have an open and honest conversation with them about what's going on with you. Also think this could be dicey, but depending on where you work, you might want to seek some support from colleagues. If you have a couple of colleagues you're really close to, talk to them. Maybe they can talk you off the ledge. And then always trying to set realistic goals. I think the younger generation gets a bad rap because we hear, oh, they just want to come in, they want to work 6 months and want a promotion, or work a year and they want to be owner of the company. So I do think just be realistic. And then it goes back to having that open and honest conversation too. I do think work-life balance is a myth. Sometimes you're working more, sometimes you're taking care of yourself more, but strive to take care of yourself. Again, it goes back to setting those boundaries, and then obviously work with a recruiter, a coach, a therapist if it's needed.
Or all 3 at the same time. You may need it.
To re-steer the ship.
Yeah, especially I found as I talk to more senior professionals, are often more burning themselves out because they've just been on this like constant work the entire time. And now that they are getting older, they just can't keep up with the pace they were doing. And I see them more struggling than the younger professionals that have kind of had mental health conversations, and they're standing up for themselves a little bit more on setting boundaries and making sure they get sleep, get outside, take a break. Right. And so I think it's a weird dynamic of struggles kind of on the 2 sides, which every generation has their own unique set of circumstances that happen.
Yeah, and I think
But
we've gotten better with that. My husband and I graduated in 2001, and I remember he was working for a firm and pulling all-nighters at the beginning of his career and traveling a bunch. I was like, I didn't even pull all-nighters in college.
Mhm.
What are you doing? So I think the profession has gotten better, but especially with architecture, it's very deadline driven. You guys might be working late hours sometimes, but you tell me. I'd be interested to hear your take on it. But I think we've gotten a little better at understanding people can't consistently work 50, 60 hours a
Mhm.
week or more, and it's not sustainable or healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think since AEC is so related to the arts, it's more of the entire kind of artistic creative industries as a
Mm-hmm.
whole. Like we can all, you could be in movie making or like clothes design, anything design oriented or have a creative nature can kind of assume like take over a person who's ever working on it, because if you really have a passion for it, you're really gonna strive to get kind of that perfectionism out of it, which can be impossible, but people will try to achieve it. And they just enjoy it. I know I got into architecture more for the drafting side. So
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to do a lot of my drafting work in the afternoon because I tend to hit a 3 p.m. wall, as I call it. And if I have to write at 3 p.m. or
Oh, yeah.
start a new activity, it's not happening. Like I just won't have the motivation. But because my passion is drafting and I can feel like I'm accomplishing something and moving forward, I could do that, and then all of a sudden it's 6, and I'm like, crap, I'm usually done at 4:30. Like, I must have to set an alarm for
Gotta get
myself to
out of here.
stop.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it depends if you really, I guess, focus too much of your energy on all the things you really like doing, you have to set reminders for yourself to stop and to step back, because sometimes it can just kind of take over and you not even realize it. But it will slow you down after a while. I get points where I'm like, I don't want to look at a screen for another couple days,
Yeah.
or prefer to like take something at a book or sketch something on a piece of paper rather than like we have so many digital tools for sketching now, and there's just great, I could do that, but I'm just so tired of monitors that I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go hand sketch something instead, just to give my eyes a break, do a different mode of design. So it can definitely help, but we definitely have tendencies
Well,
to
I
work
love
those
that
later
there's that
hours.
passion behind it. And, when you're in a flow, you don't want to stop working. So I totally get that. But I had not thought of it as just the artistic process as a whole, that
Hmm.
design process and wanting to get it just right.
Yeah, and you never know when you're going to get inspiration. Check out the full discussion from this bite of advice here. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on more mentorDINO content.